Hi, I'm Ken Biberaj, and welcome to Coffee with Ken, a thought leadership series at the nexus of business, politics, and national security today. We are coming to you from Washington, D.C., overlooking the Capitol, and special thanks to Mark Lindsay of the Livingston Group and Travis LeBlanc of Cooley, board members of Truman, for having us here today. And we're excited to have a conversation with Tony Johnson, CEO of the Truman National Security Project, about everything that's happening national security-wise and across Washington, the country, and the world. How are you? No pressure.
No,
Lots of questions.
Big topics, Ken. I'm so pleased to be here. I also want to thank our board member, Heidi Nell, who was instrumental helping bring us together. So I'm very excited to talk to you today about national security, about Truman projects. I'll say a little bit about myself, but this is a timely conversation, and you are the right person to have it with. So
well, Heidi's going to kill me because I didn't thank her at the outset. We would not get her. Now. It is an integral. She is a past guest on Coffee with Ken, and we owe her so much. So, Tony, I think the only way to frame this at the beginning is really to learn a little bit more about you, because you have such a diverse background. And when we created Coffee with Ken, the thesis was always around conversations in the middle of the Venn diagram that intersected the public sector, private, nonprofits, and advocacy. And that kind of like part of the Venn diagrams where the secret sauce of like big impact happens nationally. And you are a unique person because you've kind of touched all of these kind of sectors. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
it's true. I have existed in all of those circles, and I've converged in that space as the president and CEO of the Truman National Security Project and the Truman Center for National Policy, which I took this seat in August. But just a little bit about myself, and this is the hardest part for me. I started my career as a naval officer. I started in cryptology and intelligence, and that was in 1994. So it's been about 30 years since I've done that. That was everything that I always wanted to do. That idea came into my head when I was 9 years old. So I've always had a deep and abiding passion for national security and foreign policy. It's been at the heart of what I've done. And so I had my Navy career, which was shorter than I would like because I think I'll say this because it'll be contextually important later. I was a casualty of the don't ask, don't tell policy. But the point there is that it didn't diminish my desire to serve my country, which I continue to do at DOD, 3 tours, special operations, tour as the senior advisor to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. And most recently, I was a senior intelligence advisor to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kath Hicks, which she's a wonderful boss, and it was a wonderful tour. So 3 tours at the Pentagon, a couple of tours at the State Department, doing work downrange in Africa and Europe and South America, which has culminated, in addition to my private sector experience, which has culminated in my taking this chair and leading this community of brilliant leaders in national security and foreign policy, which is really amazing to do. I'm very privileged.
And let's talk about that, right? Because this unique background in intelligence at the Pentagon, seeing how defense operates not only from the pragmatic boots on the ground military aspect, but also from a policy formation kind of diplomacy. So tell us a little bit about why and how Truman is the right fit for you based on your past experiences, beliefs, and values.
Yeah, Truman is actually made for this moment, made for many moments. It was formed around what the United States should be doing when we went into the wars with Iraq. We've continued to be present at every moment at 9/11. We've continued to be present. We have veterans. We have kind of communicators. We have people in industry in every community across the country. 6 regions, 16 cities, 2,500 people, an army of people who not only understand what the issues are, but they also understand what the tools are that we use to deal with those issues, and they have practical experience using them. And really, they're in every community. So regardless of where you are in your political space, we have the knowledge, the experience, and kind of the practical, hands-on about talking about those things. So connecting with Americans is what we're about. Making sure that helping to unlock Americans' understanding about those national security issues that feel like they're over there, but they're really here,
Sure.
is really what Truman's been doing and will continue to do into the future.
Yeah, this national network seems to be a true differentiator, right? So you have new members who kind of join. You're in a position to help them kind of understand and get educated about the latest on the policy front, and several of them now run for office or have taken leadership positions, right? I mean, I think you've had a few cabinet secretaries that have been alum of
You may know
network,
one,
right?
Secretary Buttigieg is an alumni of ours and came through our system. Governor Wes Moore has been a beneficiary of the things that Truman has done. About 26 Trumans ran for and won office in this past cycle, and that's up and down from senators. Ruben Gallegos is a member of ours, all the way down to the kind of the state and city and local council levels. And so that's really what Truman's about, like activating those people, those leaders in that space that will help connect Americans to the national security and foreign policy things that seem like they're over there, but they really touch our lives every day.
Yeah, we're just more connected no matter what anybody wants to say, right?
Yes, that's exactly true.
Talk a little bit about some of the policy objectives and goals. Like what is unifying folks across the country? Because I think that's always a challenge, right? Folks seem to be unified maybe on certain topics or clusters, but when you have a national organization, the issues are different in Alabama than New York than California. How do you kind of identify and build a kind of unified network of support around key policy goals? And what are those big goals?
I appreciate the question. I think that defense, diplomacy, democracy, and development are terms that every American kind of understands. They recognize them. But really, I think the challenge has been is that they always feel kind of far away and happening in DC. And Americans sometimes may be challenged to figure out how their government works, and certainly at the high end of national security and foreign policy. And what Truman is doing is helping to unlock those understandings and actually asking people, what is it about national security that you care about, and helping to translate that into messaging and policies that resonate. For example, climate change and our energy resilience, right? Dependence on foreign oil is a national security issue. We don't want to be dependent on others for the resources that we need to protect our nation. So Truman was in the vanguard of making that an issue in national security and bringing about the policies, the passage of the IRA that made that actually work for Americans and made it a benefit. I think it's also true that in this time where there's a lot of change going on at a pace that's difficult to understand, it's time to think about how we might be better stewards of Americans' resources so that it pays dividends for Americans, particularly in this space. But on national security and foreign policy, this thing, maybe the singular thing around which all Americans must unite. And so it's really important that we talk and understand it so that people understand what the stakes are, what their choices are, and how they can participate in the conversation that affects their lives.
I feel like you're in such a unique position because I feel like Truman helps make national security accessible.
Yeah.
Right? Like I feel like growing up, national security always seemed like such a distant objective and goal. And in my day job, we're spending time with advanced manufacturing companies, and a lot of them are in the defense sector. And I think our generation kind of created Facebook and social media companies, but this new generation is really building stuff. There's this resurgence in manufacturing that I think is a kind of complement to the need for all of us to contribute to our broader national security. So how do you look, having spent time at DoD and seen things that we're probably not allowed to talk about, how is this new wave of innovation from the Andurils of the world and the Saronics of the world, how is that helping us diversify the offering and resources that we need to stay competitive, but also ensuring that we're tapping the best and the brightest nationally to kind of give in their own way, even if they're not serving in uniform?
That's a great question, Tim. I think that's really good.
It's a lot.
It's great. Listen, we talk about big numbers, $850 billion for the defense budget, and where does that money go to? It goes. We're not shipping it on pallets overseas to Ukraine and others, for example. It goes to American jobs and American communities where these systems are being built, and American ingenuity and creativity that makes us more effective on the battlefield, unpredictable on the battlefield because we have so many Americans from diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences actually bringing their creativity to that job. It's creating businesses like in the clean energy space. It's creating businesses in the supply chain space as we're figuring out how to make that more efficient and how to make it work and deliver results not just for the American military, 290 ship Navy, 11 divisions. We need forces that have what they need to be effective in the battlefield, and that's happening at companies in the United States that are staffed and worked on by Americans on supply lines across the country that is really delivering for Americans in terms of jobs, the economy. And so the things that we're doing over there are actually having an effect and impact here that's very positive. And I would like for Americans to understand that, right, when we're talking about big numbers.
Yeah. So in the prior administration, a big focus on kind of revitalizing the industrial base, some climate-focused projects out of DoD. What are you monitoring? What are the tea leaves you're seeing kind of now in the new administration as defense priorities?
Right. Well, first I want to just point out that it was a Truman member who was leading that, the first defense industrial base policy. Dr. Kale was a Truman member, and so that's the first one the department's ever had. So once again, a demonstration of the power of our community and how our people get out front and do that kind of thing. Um, the supply chain, protecting it, that goes everything from kind of food security, what we get in here, for the high end things like with the chips that we're using in our systems, and everything in between is really part of the American economy and our economic and strategic security that allows us to be competitive. And so the DoD happens to be one of the largest users of that particular market, but it's benefiting Americans in a lot of ways, like the new businesses that we just talked about, new technologies that are growing up. And America wants to be first in those things because of the strategic competitive space that we're in right now. It's very important that to protect Americans and protect our interests and to make sure that our country is strong and secure and prosperous, we're in the forefront of making sure that money is applied to the right technologies and things to make sure that the American people and this country can remain safe, secure, prosperous, free.
Interesting. So there's been a lot of talk lately about the kind of pros and cons of focusing on diversity, right? And that's such a broad term that I think, unfortunately, gets labeled in a certain way in mindset. How do you think about the importance of diversity from talent, from resources, from industry? How do you think about it?
I'll go back to this idea of whatever all Americans want: safe, secure, prosperous, and free. And I'll just say two things that are kind of like, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and you don't fight with one hand tied behind your back. And so that I think that every American who is able and who can meet the standards to be part of whatever, there's lots of ways to serve, but in this case we're talking about the military and the intelligence community and others, should be able to do that. It's because it's our collective diversity, not only of background, obviously, and experience, that makes us unpredictable in the battlefield, makes our adversaries hard to track what we're going to do, give us a competitive edge and advantage because we're not a monolith. And the duty and the job of protecting America belongs to all Americans, and that's a responsibility that we should share. So that I think the idea that diversity and inclusion is something that we spend a lot of time on as talking as a negative is actually a positive for us. I am an expression of that, as I've communicated, and I worked in the Department of Defense with people who are coming from all different kinds of perspectives and really delivering security and safety, prosperity for the American people. So if it's worked so far, right, we maybe shouldn't break it. We should keep leaning into it because that's the thing that helps us win.
Amazing. And one of the things we talked about before starting the conversation today was some of the tangible, physical, on-the-ground work that you and the broader Truman community are doing in Afghanistan around the kind of negative ripple effects that came after the U.S. quick departure. Talk a little bit about that. What is the kind of meaningful impact that your members heard, and then how do you as an organization kind of have stepped in?
It's one of the things that I'm most proud of from our community. We helped get at least 1,000 Afghans out, and we continue to help in the resettlement of about 76,000 Afghans that were our partners and helped and fought alongside us in their country, and them and their families. I think Afghan evac, which was led by a Truman member, as an outgrowth of that. During that kind of very intense time, that was a crisis. We helped organize over 200 organizations that were really contributing to that evacuation process. Truman members were staying up working 24/7 trying to make sure that happened, that we honored our commitment to our allies in the way that they honored their commitment to us. It's something that we're really proud of. It's one of the many kind of Truman legends where we deliver for the American people. The thing about Truman is, if you're a wonk like me who likes to talk about these things, you find your people, right? There are other people that are working on lots of things, and they have different aspects that they're working on. So you get to work on that with them and learn from them, right? About how to do it broadens your mind. You get to work on things that matter to the country in the ways that we've described, and many more we can talk about. And then occasionally you get to do things that have an enduring and an outstanding impact on the American security apparatus and really help the American people. And that's why Truman's Truman. And so I want to say that's not just something you join. We're very selective in the people that we pick. We pick the best of the best, but we do it we're the only organization, and I'm very proud of this, that is distributed nationwide who has the ability to deliver in every community where Americans live, to ask people, what is important to you about national security? What do you think? Sometimes people just don't ask.
Sure.
We do, and we're best situated to do that. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of what we've done, and I'm really excited about where we're going into the future.
Well, let's talk about that, right? You've settled in. It's been a few months at the helm, and we're entering a new administration. What's your kind of 2 to 5 year, plan? What will you look back on and be like, wow, we accomplished, what we set out to do?
I think the real thing is on national security and foreign policy, this is something that Americans have to unite around. Unfortunately, the enemies that we have are the same, and we appear to be making more by the day. The challenges that we have are pretty much what they have been for a while. And so we've got people who understand those issues. We have people who have practical knowledge with the basic set of tools that we use, which haven't changed very much. And if you're a business owner, if you're a community leader, if you're a private citizen even, you should want to talk to us, right? And we can engage you to help you understand how those things work, to help you understand what the risks are in that space. And we're going to be going about the business of that kind of civic engagement part of it, like engaging in the communities to understand and develop the language that helps them understand and helps us understand where we should be working together, creating a bipartisan space. And Americans may not be particularly in the mood for that right now, but on this issue, we cannot afford to be divided. Our national security is important. Americans have to be safe, secure, prosperous, and free. And Truman's in the business of making sure that everybody has the information that they need to do it. And we're doing trainings, we're helping officials, we're helping individuals understand that. And we're developing a language of cooperation that has kind of atrophied, and we're putting that back into play so that when we come to game time, when it's time for Americans to unite around the national security issue or a threat, or something that we want to do to protect our interests, we have the forums to do that. We have the connectivity to do that. We have the language to speak about it in productive ways. And I think that is, I'm telling you, that is something that Truman is doing, and we're really proud of. Soldiering those bridges.
So I feel like the further you get away from DC, the kind of approach to bipartisanship kind of changes, right? Like the hardening of politics is so hard and ripe here that as I've traveled the country working on manufacturing projects and some of them being climate oriented in red states, like it's never about politics. It's about jobs, community impact, innovation and kind of staying ahead. How is the conversation different the further you are outside of DC? How much time do you spend kind of crowdsourcing from outside DC to develop policies to prioritize?
All the time. Yeah, you're right. It's not about politics either.
Right.
How does it impact me? Everything from, food security, for example, and that's the supply chain issue. Do I make sure that the food that gets on my table is safe for me to eat, and how do we safeguard that? Do I have my daughters and my sons that are enlisting in the military? Do they have the equipment that they need to be effective? Are they safe, and are they able to protect our nation? Talking about those issues and developing the language around it, I think, is really important. And that is what Truman is designed to do. And that is what we are organized to do nationwide in a way that nobody else really is. And I'm really, really proud of that. I think it's something that we're the best at.
I love it. Well, so much of it's about storytelling, right? And I mean, this amazing work with Afghanistan. What are some other kind of key moments that you would want people to understand that you all played a role in?
Yeah, I think, this is back to the knife fight, one hand behind your back. Truman was in the vanguard of making sure that all occupational specialties were open to women, because we need people not only to shoot and, kind of be in combat take, but we need people to help us think through the problems, right? And so we were in the vanguard of that. Truman was in the vanguard of so many other kind of efforts to make, clean energy, as we talked about, Operation Free, which was about making, clean energy as a central element of national security. We talked about the Afghan evac thing. We talked about just, kind of the diversification of the military in terms of experience and giving that focus and direction that was less about identity and more about the talents that people bring to this thing. We're talking about, we have people doing things all the time in the intelligence space, in the development space, which is a really hot topic right now. I think we talk about institutions a lot, and we forget that people are at the center of these institutions. Many of them are veterans, right, who are employed by these agencies, and they're performing work and doing functions that are essential to making sure that American power and influence abroad remains strong, and that we're able to, have an influence over the financial system that actually that affects us all. To bring in the allies and attract the partners that we need to make sure that American interests are protected. It's not necessarily an altruism that we're
Yeah.
about. It's about making sure that America has what it needs to remain a leader in the free world.
So there seems to be a very aggressive assault on kind of the federal bureaucracy and institutions of government. And having done 3 stints at the Department of Defense, I mean, did you come out of the Pentagon kind of skeptical, concerned, or optimistic and proud? Like, tell us a little bit about what it was like being in the trenches of government and then coming out.
Yeah, I had the opportunity, like I said, I did 3 tours. On the implementer side, working with the Special Operations Forces folks at the time when took Bin Laden out. So I was there working the Special Operations team. I was able to see the planners really think about that. And then the mission was a success. And one of our Truman board members, Matt Spence was in the room when that whole operation went down. So that's another example of Truman's being out
These
there.
are the founders, right?
He's one of the founders, exactly. And I was there, I'm looking like one of my colleagues in the office for Israel and Ukraine and the Deputy Secretary's office being an intelligence advisor. And what I learned was there's no big book of answers. What it takes is a group of committed leaders who have a principled commitment to democratic foundations, to democracy, and they make choices that are values aligned to that. And then they do what's best for the American people. And it's tough. Those are hard decisions. I came out optimistic. I aspire to those positions one day. And the people who are really committed across the aisle, both civilians, especially the civilian workforce, who is the backbone. They have the experience, they have the depth, they have the time. They help keep us, kind of in line and straight and figure out what it is that's important on those issues and how do we service them in a way that protects America's interest. And I think that's really important to know. So it's true that there's always opportunity to be better stewards of the resources that Americans give us. This is one of the things that Truman talks about all the time, that we get together and we talk about how can we do things better. And if I'm candid, now that the wrecking ball is kind of swinging, it's time to think about that. Oh, this is a very nice stuff. We have to really think about the future, right? We can't just sit back and let it happen. We have to think about how, since things are changing so swiftly, how can we do it better? But that requires a space where we can talk about those things, right? And so people are really polarized right now. Truman's busy creating spaces where those forms of collaboration can be back. And we'll be prepared to answer the call, that demand signal for cooperation and collaboration across the aisle, particularly when people and Americans need it, when we need to come together in this space, because we cannot afford to go to sleep on national security in the foreign policy space.
So more people just need to sit down and have some coffee.
More people need to sit down and have some IFC.
That's what I'm saying.
As well, it's better that I have the tea, not the coffee. Honestly, this is wonderful.
That's amazing. Well, look, as we're kind of winding down, I always want to kind of give you the opportunity to kind of help us drill down on a call to action, right? So whether it's from the kind of thought leadership, academic, nonprofit perspective, right? Like, what do you need what kind of thought pieces would you like other nonprofit associations, educational groups to put together? What do you need from the private sector, and what are you looking from government in terms of like support, involvement, or
Well, I'll tell you what, organizations don't have needs, people do, right? And so what I would say is that if you're a business leader or a community leader who wants to understand the challenges that are facing our country from a national security perspective, if you want to understand the tools that we use to address those issues, if you want to understand what the risks and opportunities are to your business, to your community, to your person, Truman is a place where you can engage in that. We have programs for training to help officials and others understand everything from like kind of military 101 thing to the higher order things, what's going on in development. If you want us to come and talk to you about those things, we arrange those kinds of meetings at the community level and also at the official level. We also have kind of meetings and convenings all the time that provide that insight to folks. So these are things that I think are worthy of patronage and attention, and certainly it's a service to the American people, which is what we aim to do to serve. So if you want to support Truman and you believe that American national security is important to you, then trumanproject.org, you can go there and click on our website and support that. I believe that the American people are still united on this issue, that we want an America that's safe, secure, prosperous, and free. And if you want people who understand that intimately and know how it works, then we're the ones everywhere where you live.
That's amazing. And you have a big conference coming up every year?
Yeah, so we do
Tell us about TrueCon.
TrueCon every year is our opportunity to showcase with our members what they're talking about, to invite luminaries to talk and speak to us, to invite the public in. We have a public day where we talk about these issues and people can interact with policymakers and Truman makers. We do workshops around those things. So we're still in the process of planning those things, but that is kind of our way to convene. We bring in Trumans from all over. And we talk, and we have a convening that enables us to showcase that. We're looking at modifying that this year. Maybe there's a possibility we might take TrueCon on the road and go to kind of our individual spaces. So we're playing with a lot of different models. This is in keeping with the fact of going to meet the American people where they are, and not just making it a DC-centric thing, which is by design. We're not. We're everywhere, and so we want to really lean into that.
That's amazing. Well, Tony Johnson, thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Incredible to hear about your background and everything that Truman's working on, and the broad breadth and reach that you have as an organization. So thank you for being on Coffee with Ken.
This is amazing, Ken. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. I'm very excited.
I appreciate all of you being here in person as well, and hopefully you can have a chance to chat a little bit more with Tony when we sign off, and everybody watching. You know, just like Tony said, grab a cup of coffee, meet someone new this week, spend some time getting to know your community and other folks. In the meantime, it's coffeewithken.com, where you can subscribe and follow and stay tuned to next episodes. Take care.